here. It's nice to see those of you that I can see and nice to have you all here. Welcome to the very first ever Creative Careers Lab Creative Challenges workshop. I'm going to hand it over really quickly to Alex Lee from Venice Arts, who's going to lead you through the workshop. I just wanted to say hello and welcome and hope you enjoy it. And if you enjoy it, spread the word and invite others, and we'll see you all soon. Alex, it's yours.
Thank you, Lori. Hello, everybody. So it's a pleasure to meet all of you, and welcome to the Creative Careers Leadership Lab. My name is Alex Lee, and today I'm here to share more information about the Animation, VFX, and Game Production Creative Challenge. I'm a teaching artist at Venice Arts. We are a program dedicated to supporting low-income youth in the greater Los Angeles area, gain experience through photography, film education, all sorts of different arts, and use participatory storytelling practices to amplify the voices of underrepresented communities around the world. Last year, we started a pilot program in partnership with LA County to help 18 to 25-year-olds coming out of school to find their first foothold in this very competitive industry. It's a great program. And it was through Venice Arts that I was introduced to Eric Ibarra, amazing man who's been working on this great program that you are all joining us here for today. So yeah, from there, let me go ahead and get started real quick. So, give me 1 second. Okay, so the Creative Challenge is really designed to help all of you channel all that creative energy that maybe you've been storing up, thinking about that project that you wanting to do, but haven't really had the reason or impetus to get started with. And this challenge is designed to help you think critically about the things that matter to you. And specifically with games, this is a space where, you know, often people think it's just a fun activity, right? It's just sort of like a fun little thing that you do to, you know, kill time or maybe just hang out with your friends. But really, games is one of the most exciting new fields in the industry, in arts, really. And there's a whole slew of independent games where really you're seeing so much originality and expression beyond just fun, which, you know, nothing wrong with fun. Please have fun with your video games, but there is a whole avenue of artistic and exploration and personal expression that is capable with the medium. And this design challenge, this challenge is pretty broad. So the games industry utilizes artists from so many different disciplines, from, you know, animators to musicians to directors, writers, voice actors. It really utilizes pretty much every single different artistic discipline and brings it all together. But today specifically, we're going to be focusing a bit more on the animation, visual effects and how these contribute to game production. So specifically, the challenge here is to learn to use mirror mechanics as a metaphor, and even more specifically, how to use 2D sprite animation to affect game feel and the overall player experience and user experience. So game feel is often sort of, as a slang in the industry, referred to as like juiciness. It's sort of that je ne sais quoi, that slightly difficult to encapsulate quality of like what makes something feel good in a very sort of tactile and visceral sort of manner. Because unlike a lot of the other arts, games is interactive. It's the defining characteristic of what makes a game is that there's input and feedback from the person who's experiencing the art and the developer who created the piece in question. So today we're going to try to see how you can use original character designs and sprite sheets, which you will then incorporate in a 2D platform template using either Unity Engine, Godot, Scratch or some other game development environments that you are comfortable and familiar with. I understand a lot of you are in games classes. I know some of you are more artistically oriented. This should hopefully provide a nice fun challenge for whichever direction you slightly lean towards. And this is the bare minimum as far as using sprite sheets. That's just the bare minimum expectation, but really this challenge is designed to really scale with you. So if you want to really take on more and challenge yourself to create a wide array of animations, a wide array of different particle effects and things like that, these workshops will help you sort of learn how to start incorporating all of these different elements into your game so that you can really make it the way you imagine and visualize it in your head. Then once you're done with all of that, you'll create a short highlight video, or you can also upload your game to something like itch.io if you like, so that you can share with all your other peers the work that you've done with your challenge. All right, so let me go ahead and try to get you a bit excited, hopefully, about this prospect, and maybe show you some videos that you haven't seen and get you pumped up and hyped for the challenge. So first, the first real lesson I always try to teach all my students is fail faster. Now, fail faster is a mantra that really I feel like everyone should incorporate in their life, even outside of their artistic endeavors. But I'll let the video speak for itself in just a bit. So let me get that set up real quick for you.
Before we begin, let me give another warm welcome to returning guest artist Mac Coe, who is just the best guy. We love having him. Anyway, for a long time, James just assumed this was the first lesson all designers learned, and that it would be kinda redundant to do a whole show about it. Not so, apparently. He's recently observed professional designers waste millions of dollars, seen students cheated out of the education they should have and graduating with no hope of getting a job in this industry, and watched people trying to make games for the greatest good falter, all because they didn't learn the one most basic lesson of design: fail faster. This is the designer's credo. It is our mantra. It is our goal with every waking second of every day. Fail faster. No idea is made fully formed. No game you design will ever be right on the first pass. The art of what we do is simply spiraling towards a better center, course correcting along the way. Fail faster, because without testing, and without exposing your thoughts to others and embracing how many horrible mistakes and egregious failures you made in your last pass, you will never create a good game. Fail faster by understanding that no idea is good, by understanding that the high-level idea for Mario is a plumber on drugs, that the concept behind Sonic is an indigo hedgehog and sneakers that can run really fast, and that the pitch line for Gears of War is linebackers with chainsaw guns. These ideas are all terrible, and they're all great. As mere ideas, they're meaningless. Choose something, anything, begin to iterate, and fail faster. Any plan is better than no plan, because even though your plan is inevitably full of miserable misconceptions that'll lead you headlong into problems as you go, to and from there you can start to correct your course towards what's really right. Too many times, James has seen teams spin their wheels debating concepts and high-level ideas, and starting to work only once they felt they had the best possible idea. But that perfect idea of theirs was as human and as flawed and as fundamentally broken as all of our ideas. And now they'd spent so much time dreaming up that perfect idea that they had no time left to iterate on it. Now those perfect ideas are relegated to bargain bins, or lingering on one of those unseen projects that never shipped because they were unable to mill out all the flaws. Meanwhile, ideas like, hey, let's throw birds at pigs, makes $1 billion. And let's put a child into a zombie apocalypse moves us to tears. So fail faster. You don't even need to have something playable to fail. It doesn't have to be fully baked. You don't even need more than words on a page. Start with that first broad pass on what this game will be, then hand it off. Tell people, hey, I'm vetting this for a friend of mine, and I don't think it's very good, but I was hoping to get a second opinion. Just so no one's afraid to be brutally honest with you. Let them redline that thing and mark it all up. Let them just tear it apart bit by bit. Accept the truths that you might be too close to see. This is how a game goes from sucking to sucking less, to being kind of okay, I guess, to being pretty good, to finally becoming great. Fail before you even have a line of code. Mock up the mechanics on paper. Try to play it with others as quickly as you can. Get your concept art in front of a dozen eyes. Try 20 different styles and themes. Close your eyes and put yourself in the shoes of the player. Imagine yourself playing the game down to the button presses you'll make, and watch where it goes wrong. Fail faster. Get a prototype up as soon as is humanly possible. It doesn't need art, it doesn't need to impress, it needs to be as raw and as open as it can be so you can understand it without being distracted by all the bells and whistles. Play it. Just play it into the ground. Let everyone else play it. You will learn and you will correct, and you'll do so before it costs you greatly. Because the later you fail, the more expensive your failures will be to correct, and so the less likely you'll be to correct them. So fail faster. Your ideas can't be precious. Your ego can't need protecting. You have to understand that the only thing that matters is the game you ship, not any of the steps along the way. Every failure is an opportunity for betterment. Every failure is another chance to get it right. Don't give these away out of fear or shyness. Fail faster, because failing is how we get it right.
All right. So this is a lesson I even have to remind myself of constantly, because it's very easy to get bogged down and caught up in trying to come up with that perfect idea first before moving forward, because you're always afraid of, oh, well, if we're going to have to undo all this work that we did to begin with, then what a pain that will be. But that's a feeling you're going to want to get over, even if it's simple concept art. Don't be overly precious with it and don't overly commit. Really put it out there. I know that as young artists, especially, it can be pretty nerve-wracking, challenging, or difficult to put your work out there. And, you know, criticism can feel pretty crushing, but don't let that get to you. Let's see, I seem to have lost video. I can't see who I'm talking to anymore. 1 second. Okay. All right. So fail faster. Now, as far as this particular challenge goes, there's a lot of different ways you can go with it. Now, some of you might be a bit more technically inclined. Maybe some of you guys are in a computer science class and you've never picked up a pencil or a pen to draw something in your entire life. And it can be daunting when you think, oh my God, I have to do art or animation. Well, don't let it daunt you. I'm going to show a couple different examples of how you can use animation from immensely beautiful and ornate to extremely simple and fundamental, and use it to your advantage. All it really comes down to is having a vision. And even if you've never done any art in your entire life, you can still create something beautiful with just a little bit of care and attention. So let me go ahead and show an example of what we can see on one end of the spectrum. So I don't know if you've heard of this game. Probably most of you have. It has a TV show as well. Let me go ahead and show some clips on it so you can see. Sorry, I was muted. Yeah, so looks pretty good, right? It's very evocative, bold, like early 20th century Disney or animated films of that era, very intentionally. And it's not just because it's drawn in that artistic style. This was actually hand drawn. Every single sprite here was hand drawn on paper in a traditional animation style by the developers. And then these images were scanned in and then colored digitally after the fact. So if you're not very tech savvy and you're more of an artist or illustrator rather, no need to feel inhibited by that. The tools aren't nearly as important as just trying to get your vision down, at least in principle. So you can go ahead and draw these out. Oh, sorry, is my Zoom video panel? Okay, one, sorry. Yeah, so apologies, little technical issues. Sorry, what was I saying? Yeah. So you could go that way where you do this very labor intensive style of traditional hand-drawn animation and then bring that into your game. If you're more familiar with pen and paper, traditional media, and so forth. But then you can go sort of on the complete flip side. So this is another game called Thomas Was Alone. Second.
Thomas was alone. Wow, a weird first thought to have. Spikes? That was new. Claire avoided them. She decided they were most likely her kryptonite. Not the rubbish red kryptonite either, the proper radioactive green stuff.
So, what do you think of that? It's fairly minimalist, right? But there's a certain beauty and elegance to the visuals. Yeah, this was developed by one man. He had never done any art before in his life and essentially started working with the primitive shapes, squares, rectangles, and so forth. And the actual shape of these characters informed the personality of the characters that you got to get familiar with throughout the course of the game. It's quite a beautiful game and an excellent use of mechanics as metaphor. We'll get to that in a little bit. And yeah, I highly recommend everyone play these games if you get a chance. But if not, you can always just watch a Let's Play video as well. Though that's not quite the same, but it's good enough. Yeah, so he had never touched a pen in his life, pretty much, not literally, but you get the point I'm trying to get across. But he still understood that little changes. For example, if you watch the end jump animations on these pieces, you can see that there are slight shapes changes as well as size. Yeah, like right there. Did you see how the green rectangle here thinned out as it was jumping? It really adds that little bit of juiciness or game feel, which we're going to get a bit more into depth. And you don't have to have some like super fancy art with like, you know, crazy smear frames and things like that in order to pull it off. Sometimes a little bit goes a really long way. And I'll show you an example of how you can pull this off, even if you aren't a super skilled artist. So how do you make your game feel juicy or feel satisfying? Well, here's one quick tutorial that can show you how all these little details add up.
This is a pretty simple 2D platformer game. You can move, jump, and shoot bullets at this enemy. It looks okay and you can have fun with it, but you know, it doesn't feel that interesting. So in this video, I will show you my methods to make such a simple game feel way better. But please keep in mind, these tricks don't apply to all games. So let's get right into it. Color is one of the key aspects of game feel. A change in color can give the player good feedback on what he did, and feedback is the most important part of game feel. I made it so that when the enemy gets hit from the bullet, he flashes white. It just tells the player that the shot has connected. And this is actually quite simple to do. On hit, you change the enemy's color to be white, and after some time, you reset the color to be normal again. And with that simple change, the game already feels more interesting. Another way to give the player more feedback and make the game feel nicer is changing in shapes. What I applied here is the so-called squash and stretch animation. The character squashes and stretches when he fires a bullet, and the same applies to the opponent when he gets hit by a bullet. This trick just gives both actions more impact, and they also feel more juicy and alive. Particles are also very important to make something look and feel way better. So I just added 3 simple particle effects. When the player jumps, when the bullet hits something like a wall or the enemy, and when the enemy finally dies. And here it is very essential to keep in mind that less important events, like jumping or the bullet hitting a wall, don't really need a big explosion with many particles. Only for critical actions, like the death of the enemy, it's okay to really let it bang. But most of the time, some small particles are enough. Just keep it simple. One thing that I love to add is knockback. Knockback is a pretty nice way to let the player really feel the impact of a shot from his weapon. So every time the player fires a gun, add some recoil. You can also apply knockback on the opponent when he gets hit from the bullet. And it can also be pretty fun to boost yourself around with the weapon. To make something feel way more powerful and strong, screen shake is the easiest option to go with. It really improves the feeling that the characters and objects in the game really interact with the world and have impact on it. But you have to be very careful. Screen shake is a double-edged sword. It can really give your game more juiciness, but it can also ruin the game if you have too much or strong screen shake. Screen shake lets the player feel explosions or hits, but it can also seriously disrupt gameplay or distract the player. So be careful and rather use a bit less screen shake than too much. I would actually say that none of these tricks I showed before are such great at improving the game feel and making sure the player gets enough feedback than sound. An explosion is not an explosion without sound. So make sure that nearly everything in your game has a matching sound effect. If you compare the version without sound and then with sound, you can really see the difference it makes. And with that, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it and maybe you learned something new. If you did, then be sure.
All right. Fairly simple, right? It's one of those little things. Didn't require any original illustration on the part of the developer, who also is right around your age. But all these little details really add up, and they may feel like bells and whistles to, you know, the core gameplay, right? These are just like little flourishes and details, but all these things do matter, and then they all contribute to the overall game experience. So it's little details like this that makes a game that's essentially simple, like Super Mario, feel satisfying, whereas I'm sure you've played some Flash games or games online where it just doesn't have that same satisfying feeling as you guys are playing it. And it's because of this one word right here, feedback. Feedback is what makes games games. This is the core element of interactivity that sets this art form apart from others. And so you want to utilize it as much as possible. And this is true not just in terms of the mechanics, but also with the art. If the art is overly static and doesn't respond to what's happening in the environment, it is not going to feel real or lively and interactive. So when you guys start creating your games and start animating your walk cycles or your jump cycles and idle cycles, also think about all the other small types of animations you might want, like when you get hit, or maybe when you do a fall from a small distance versus a large distance, right? The impact and how your character's animation response to the different forms of stimuli and what the player does will heavily affect the game feel. Okay, so let's step away from the art for a moment and talk about the mechanics. So I know some of you are going to be more experienced with coding and the development side of things. If you are, I highly recommend that you try to adjust the mechanics and really think about what do your mechanics say about your game and what are they actually conveying to the player, because even if you don't intend it, mechanics are metaphors. So we're going to talk about, watch this little video here from the same channel as before, Extra Credits. So I highly recommend everyone subscribe and check out their contents. There's a lot of good stuff there. 1 second. All right.
Hey folks, Allison's still getting some much needed rest and settling in at the new job, so please join me in welcoming back our pal Shannon Meisner. This week we're going to do something slightly different and ask you to play a game before you continue watching. It's just a flash game, it'll only take like 3 minutes tops, but I think you'll find those 3 minutes of play leave you with a lot to talk about after, possibly more than most 20-hour game experiences do. The link should be below the video down there to the right, but in case you're watching this embedded somewhere, here you go. So, go give it a play, we'll see you back here in a few.
So let me go ahead and show you this game real quick. If you have access to the slides, you'll see a link so that you can actually play it yourself later. But this is a game called Loneliness, a Not game by Jordan Magnuson. As you can see, if I use the arrows, I can move around this block. So moving around. So I think you get the basic idea here. Before I comment on it, I'll go ahead and let the video finish.
May have loved that. Okay, so you may have loved that or hated it. Maybe you found it pretentious or thought it was spot on. But the main thing is, either way, we can talk about it. All the time, I see people analyzing the writing in games by itself, talking about the written story and discussing its meaning in the way that you might a book. Which, I mean, hey, that's a good thing to do, but we so rarely hear people talk about the meaning inherent in mechanics. So today we're going to talk about mechanics as metaphor. Mechanics with meaning. Because to me, if we ever want games to be truly powerful experiences, if we really want them to reach their full potential and be able to explore an enormous range of concepts, and if we want more experiences where you just put down the controller at the end and sit there stunned, then we have to start examining the meaning that inheres in the action within our games, rather than just the words themselves. Not doing so would be like denying that films can convey meaning outside the script, like saying the entire narrative in a movie is told only through the words the characters say. So let's look at loneliness. What's amazing about it is the fact that it undeniably has a narrative, even though it features no words, save for a few sentences of the designer's thoughts at the end. But what's more incredible to me is how different that narrative can be for different people. Some of you probably tried to go to all of the groups. Some of you probably started avoiding the groups partway through. Some of you probably tried to double back and see if there was anything you missed. Some of you were probably hoping that last dot would finally be the one, while others of you probably walked straight on by it, not wanting to be denied one last time. Heck, some of you probably just gave up and closed the game halfway through. And each of those possibilities is its own distinct narrative. Each of those responses tells us a little about ourselves. This game not only tries to put us in the emotional state of that crushing loneliness, that feeling of always being on the outside, but it lets us explore it. And this, to me, is the unique power games have. Those of you who went up to every group had a protagonist that was always trying to find some place where they fit in. Those of you who started avoiding everything played a loner who decided that he or she didn't need a world that didn't accept them. And most of you probably made this choice consciously while playing, even though you may not have registered it at the time. If you think back to your play experience, those of you who avoided groups probably had that thought flash through your mind, hey, screw these guys, I don't need them, when you chose to start avoiding things. And those of you who went up to each group probably said to yourself at least once as a fleeting thought somewhere along the line, well, I hope this group accepts me. Looking at and reflecting on this experience can tell us something about ourselves. By having the meaning embedded in the mechanics, it gives us a chance to truly make choices, to truly explore through play. Most of us have been trained to think of choice in games as something you do at binary moments, often as a dialogue choice or a very clear action. Do I save this person? Do I not save this person? But here, choice is analog. It's in every moment of your play. Perhaps you started by trying to find people to associate with, but then decided that you were fed up with the world and were better off alone. Until late in the game, you decided to give it one last try and see if you could come back to the world and find someone who would accept you. Perhaps you just walked straight through it all, oblivious of the rest, concerned only with your own path. Or perhaps your story unfolded in some other way entirely. That is real choice right there. That's more choice than even these games will give you. Now, you might think that this is total crock, or you might have a completely different opinion about what's going on here and what its value is. But that's great. My favorite type of entertainment is the kind where afterwards you go out to an all-night diner with your buddies and debate what it really means, or why it matters to the world you live in. That's what you can do here. There's a discussion to be had, even if you think the game itself is pretentious or terrible. So join us next week when we talk about how the idea of mechanics as metaphor can be used in major release games. We'll be talking about both the benefits and the difficulties of using this concept, and perhaps most importantly, talk about some AAA games where it's already being used. And if you know of other games where the mechanics already embody meaning, share it in the forums or shoot us an email. I can't promise we'll be able to respond to all of you, but it's something we love hearing about. Thanks again.
All right. So hopefully some of you were inspired by that. Yeah, I'm running a little behind on time, so I'm going to try to speed things up. But yes, so the game used a very simple mechanic, position, as a metaphor to accentuate the concept of loneliness, of being apart. And this is nothing but simple spatial relations between two things. This is a topic that interests you. In academia, the sort of difference between story and mechanics is often referred to as ludology. Ludos is Latin for play. So the study of play and mechanics versus narratology. Some good books on it. Anyways, I'm getting a little sidetracked there. Let me go ahead and jump back into these slides here real quick. Okay. So during this challenge, you'll have the opportunity to demonstrate mastery of some specific standards set up by the AME Essential Skills and Competencies, including academics. So we're going to be examining pioneers, innovators, and icons from diverse genres, cultures, backgrounds, and experiences. So you're going to get to see a lot of the different artists and fascinating things that they're doing and experimenting with in the medium, as well as some of the more popular titles that you might be familiar with and how they excellently execute on them. So As far as technology, you'll be demonstrating proficiency in job-specific industry standard hardwares and softwares. So depending on what software you'll have available to you, you'll be learning specific skills related to things like Photoshop or Godot or a number of other tools that people regularly use in the industry. You'll also have to demonstrate some problem solving and critical thinking. So you'll be not just playing games and watching them, but critically analyzing them going forward. Really consider what is the implied meaning when you are playing Mario going around rescuing a princess at the end of some large level, right? We take it at face literal value, but there's a lot more that you're processing, your brain's processing without you really realizing it, and you're accepting certain ideas as truth when you probably shouldn't be. We'll get more into that in future workshops. Leadership and teamwork. So some of you, I imagine most of you are going to be working on these in class, so you'll probably be working as part of teams. Game development is a very long and arduous process, and 9 out of 10 times you will be working with other people. Yes, there are some solo developers who do everything on their own, but they're far and few between for the most part. So you'll have to learn to work collaboratively and to realize collective artistic ideas and projects. And you're going to have to demonstrate independent initiative and work ethic. We aren't going to necessarily be working remotely, but a lot of game development is done outside of an office, and you have to learn to work on your own, and you have to be able to hit deadlines and benchmarks on your own. So this will be an opportunity for you to really exercise that discipline muscle and to learn to take initiative on your own. Okay, so by the end, you will have learned how to identify how art influences game feel beyond simple aesthetics. You'll also learn and understand how animators convey personality and emotion through a character they can't directly control. It's unlike film or a lot of other media, you can't control what the player is going to do, but somehow you still have to convey your character. Next, you'll be learning, you'll be able to develop a visual aesthetic and a mise-en-scène. That's a film term. And it just means all the things you put in that the consumer sees to convey story and influence the gameplay experience. So everything from background designs to the characters, as well as the music, all of that is part of the mise-en-scène. And then 4, you'll have the ability to incorporate original art into a game engine. So the challenge requirement stipulates that you'll have to have a minimum of 1 character with sprite sheet animations for a walk cycle, an idle cycle, jump, and action animation. And the action can be any action of your choice. Start brainstorming, thinking about what you might want to make your game characters do and how that mechanic that you're animating for informs the character as well as the personality and story as well, and the metaphor. Okay, then you will be importing these art assets into Unity Engine, Godot, Scratch, whichever one that you prefer, where you'll be provided a project template. So that even if you don't know how to code, you will be able to bring your art into the projects, and then they'll be plug and play. If you do know how to code and develop, then you're absolutely encouraged to create your game from scratch. Not in Scratch, but from scratch. Never mind. Okay, then once you've done this, you'll record a short 30-second to 1-minute video of gameplay footage in which you will then demonstrate all the different animations that you created. And then you will upload this to YouTube so that everyone else in the program can see all the good work that you did. All work must be original, so no plagiarism, no just copying an image directly from Google Images and then using it. You must create all the original assets yourself that you can. So if you don't get the time to do the like backgrounds or things like that, you can just use the template images that came with it. However, don't use any work without permission. It must not include any music or images that are copyrighted. All materials must be appropriate. So that means no hate speech, violence, or anything meant to target a specific group based on any affiliation. And you can check out the Creative Challenge evaluation rubric to see how you'll be scored. There's a link in the deck. All right, the things you'll need, a computer. While I would love to absolutely also include board games as an option, because creating board games is an excellent exercise for budding game developers and game designers. It's part of the challenge is to help build up your technical skills as well. So you will need a computer, and on the computer, you'll need either Godot, which is an open source game engine, so it's free, you can download it. Scratch, which is also free and available, and it's web-based, or Unity, which is, there is a free version available. So if you don't have any of these programs, you should be able to get it as long as your computer can run it. And then some digital illustration software, either Photoshop, Procreate, or some other program you might be comfortable that you own or comfortable in. Or if you want to try going the analog route, you can you'll need a scanner so that you can digitize your analog illustrations. Or you could try using your phone. That will probably make a little more work for yourself if you're going to try to clean it up digitally later. But that is also an option. So the first step of the creative challenge is you're going to be analyzing. So you're going to be watching. In this case, I would prefer if you have the ability to actually play the games in question. But if you can't, you can watch Let's Play videos and analyze these clips and sort of think critically on them. And you can use this graphic organizer to sort of help guide your thinking and your brainstorming. So after that, step 2 will be planning. So at the planning stage, this is when you're really going to start getting full on brainstorm mode. So you can start thinking about questions like, what kind of settings are you going to place your game in? And what kind of characters? What gets you excited, right? Brainstorm character designs. So if you maybe put out some doodles or some just written descriptions of what your characters would be. Think about overall motifs and aesthetics that will run through your whole game, right? And then consider who your characters are. Even if they never talk, or even if they're just a basic shape, they always have a personality. If you don't give them one, the player will project one onto your character. So give it thoughts and think about how can you exhibit your character's personality through their actions, like how they move or how they jump or animate. And then think about what is the core movement that defines the essence of your character, right? So Mario jumps, Sonic runs, etc. And that's going to really inform both the personality as well as the art direction that you take with your game. And then finally, what other art assets do you want to create? Make a list and prioritize them by necessity to luxury. One of the biggest mistakes almost all first-time game developers make is overscoping their projects. Your eyes are bigger than your mouth is. So you always want to prioritize the things that make up what is called an MVP, the minimum viable product, right? So the MVP is the bare minimum number of things that you need to have a functioning product. So then you prioritize them, and then you list things to like very important to nice to have to luxury and so forth, so that you can plan appropriately. And you'll have an organizer here linked in the deck that you can use to help you brainstorm, as well as then start prioritizing and planning your action plan. Okay, and then step 3 will be the working draft. So in step 3, you're going to make your first draft of your game. So let me remind you again of the mantra, fail faster. So rapid prototyping. Don't fully render your illustrations, right? If you spend your time like perfecting one like frame or one art design, you're really locking yourself in. So really try putting out a whole bunch of different ideas out there and then test to see how the animation feels when you play them, right? So even if it's just like a rough sketch and it doesn't look good, you'll get an idea of how it feels and how it plays, right? So you can sort of see, oh, maybe the turn animation happens a little too fast, or it looks a little unnatural, or maybe the run cycle, it's like a little disjointed. The sooner you can work those things out, the less work you'll have to do later. And then 3, budget your time appropriately. Don't spend too much time on any single element. All right. I think that's fairly straightforward. Okay. Then step 4 will be practice and revise. So at this point, you're going to want to get feedback. Testing your drafts in game engine playtest to see how it looks and feel, and have other people playtest your game as soon as possible. Most people who are in the arts understand when things are in a draft form or work in progress, that it's nothing like what the final is supposed to be like. And so you gotta, as harrowing and emotionally taxing as it might feel to put your work out there when it's not done yet, you'll want to get used to it as soon as possible, because when you're deep in the weeds, it's easy to lose track for the forest for the trees. And so you're too close to be objective about your own work. So you want other people to see it and give you feedback as soon as possible. And not just like 1 or 2 people, you want a lot of different viewpoints, especially with games, because everyone has a different attitude and approach to how they interact with games. So you want to see how a wide variety of people respond to them. Okay, then you're going to want to make minute adjustments to all the little details like the arts, the speed and transition. Maybe you want to use 10 frames instead of 15, or 4 frames instead of 5, things like that. And then as you play around with that, you'll see how it's better or worse. And then you can start incorporating all the other art elements that really enhance the game feel. Things like sound effects, music, particle effects, camera shakes, etc. If you have the bandwidth and the time and the gumption to include all those extra elements. And then finally, step 5, you will produce your final work. So after you've play tested the game to make sure everything animates properly, create a build of the game to upload to itch.io so others can play it. If you create it in Scratch or something, no need to make a build, but it's good practice to actually have a finished final deliverable product that you can put out there in the world so others can play it. Then you're going to use software like QuickTime, OBS, or some other screen capture software in order to capture 1 minute of gameplay highlight footage that will showcase all the different animation and art assets that you created, so you can show off. And then you will upload this gameplay footage to YouTube to be shared. The submission procedures can be seen here. And then you can complete the form and follow the guidelines, and your videos and all the other submissions will be premiered at the Grid Festival happening in March. You can follow CCLL's Instagram for updates. All right, so that pretty much wraps it up. I'm sure some of you have some questions, so we can go ahead and do a Q&A at this point.
Alex, Lori here. We have one question asking if it's okay to use templates, or does it have to be entirely from scratch?
Yep, templates is fine. If you are a developer, I would encourage you to try to create it from scratch, but that's not a requirement. This is about using art and animation to enhance gameplay. So even if you don't know how to do a single line of code, just go ahead and grab a template if you like. Just make sure that all the art assets that you do use are original.
Thank you. Where do we turn in the work?
So the submission guidelines, there's a link on the deck. I can try to pull it back up in a second.
I can help with that one too. Hey, Angel, and everyone else. My name is Eric. I dropped a link to a presentation in the chat. On the very last slide, there's a link to a form. It's a hyperlink to a Google form. When you click on that link and you're done with your project, you basically just respond to the questions. It asks for your name and your school and some other stuff. And then there's a way that you can upload your final video to a Google form. And that would be the way that you would submit your final draft. So
Thanks,
if you
Eric.
click on that link that's in the chat, it'll be on that last slide.
Yeah, I can also pull it up real quick here if you can see.
Yeah, that one right there. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you follow this link on this last slide here, it will take you to this sheet, and then you can submit your project.
Right. Yeah. Thanks, Alex. And then another question. Derek was asking if it was, or Alex was asking if it was okay to use Unreal Engine. I'm assuming it's in that type of platform.
Yeah. If that's your most comfortable development environment, by all means, though, it should be 2D because we are focusing on specifically spreadsheet animation. So if that's what you feel like using, that's totally fine. Just make sure that you have a build that you can export along with gameplay footage. Is required
to upload the final gameplay video to YouTube.
Yes, so I believe
you'll actually be downloading it as like an MP4. So you'll upload your file to that Google form. Alex, you mind pulling it up real quick to the form and just scroll all the way to the bottom? So see how it's asked for your name and all, and it says upload film. We'll update that, but it'll say upload file. And you just need to rename your file so that it says the school name underscore the title of your project underscore and then the year. And you click on add file and it'll ask you, it'll go through your computer and you can just upload the file there. So that's the way that you'd be able to do that. And the gameplay has to be, how long, Alex? Was it 1 to 3?
A minute at most, I would say. If it takes longer to showcase all the different work you did, then it can be a little longer, but I would say anywhere between 30 seconds to a minute and a half.
Just to interrupt for 1 second, Jenna, an additional response to your question is that all of the students' work, all of the projects across all of the schools and all of the various creative disciplines are going to be featured at the Grid Student Showcase in March. So the reason you're uploading is so that we can share it out with all of your peers throughout the state. And then every student's work is entered into the Student Choice Awards, where it will be evaluated based on different elements of the evaluation rubric for prizes.
All right, any other questions? Okay, well then, I guess, oh, there we go. Are you able to work in groups? Yes, absolutely. So this will depend more on how your teachers choose to integrate it into your specific schools. But I do actually highly encourage people working in groups as opposed to being a solo dev. But if solo dev's your only option, that's totally fine as well.
And then Derek wants to know how many people can be in a group.
Yeah, there's no rule. I would recommend though that you probably limit group sizes to no larger than 4 or 5, I would say. Development teams can get pretty unwieldy pretty quickly. I don't know if any of you have participated in game jams before, but once you have a certain number of people, it can actually slow you down. So I would say your sweet spot's probably anywhere between 2 and 5.
Well, if there aren't any more questions, a couple of notes before we sign off. One, Alex, thank you so much for kicking us off, for leading us through the inaugural Creative Challenge workshop. To all of you who joined in, thanks so much for participating. And a little reminder, right? You guys are all part of a pilot. This is the first ever statewide Creative Careers Leadership Lab effort. And these are the first ever creative challenges. that are tied to the pathways within the AME program. And so we're here to learn from you guys. So when you have feedback, when you have questions, when you have suggestions, please don't be shy. Don't hesitate to send us information. All of your teachers know how to get in touch with us. You can reach out to us directly. You can send messages through your classroom teachers. We really do want to hear from you. As we move forward in workshops 2 and 3 for animation, VFX, and game design, you will see Alex and all of us back again in November, in December, in January. So we're here to be offering you tips and tools along the way. So we hope to see you again. And as I said, you know, this culminates at the Grit, and we're looking forward to being able to showcase all of your amazing work to kids throughout the state when we get there in the spring. So I think that's all we have for today before we say farewell. Any final thoughts or questions from you guys? No? Okay, well, I'm gonna say thanks to the teachers too for setting this up. Really appreciate all of your support. And yes, Eric just put a note in the chat. The next workshop is Monday, November 7th. Be here, same link at 4:30 in the afternoon for basically another hour session.
Yep, it'll be fun stuff. All right.
Thanks, everybody. Talk to you soon.